All right. Hello, everyone. If you saw my video yesterday, you know that I'm trying to interview one person a day as we get through this quarantine. My first guest is Jim Blackburn. So, Jim, thank you for being a part of this today.
Josh, it's a pleasure. I always enjoy visiting with you. This will be
Hi,
fun.
me too. Just for a little backstory about Jim and I, we actually met in the fall. And then our bond has grown through our love of the Ohio State Buckeye football team in the ups and downs that was the last season. And then also with the journey of personal growth that I think we both kind of find ourselves on. And yeah, so that is Jim. He is also the creator of a program called Serve Living, which is a life adjustment and reset experience for people battling anxiety, have bouts of depression or unpleasant feelings. And one of the foundational pieces is that thought of becoming better or doing better to kind of get out of those negative feelings. And Jim kind of argues that that contributes to our struggle. So, is there anything I left out there with Jim about the Serve Living program?
No, no. Thank you for introducing it.
Yeah, of course. So, Jim, kind of given that, what are some of your thoughts about obviously the pandemic that we're going through with COVID-19 and just how people are being affected?
Wow. Well, little did I know, or did we know, that this pandemic was going to be here as we were creating the program. But as you know, the program is to help people relate to life experiences that are not working for them differently. And this pandemic has created a very unusual life experience for all of us. So I would say a couple of things. That people need to become more aware. People, when they feel this kind of pressure, tend to become more of who they are. So cynics become more cynical. Optimists, believe it or not, will become more optimistic. Angry people become more angry. Fearful people, anxious people become more of those characteristics. And I'll remind you, Josh, that who you are is how you be. So that's something to be aware of in yourself and in the people around you. The second thing I'm observing, and I think this is important for people to hear, is our relationships. Our most important relationships are going to be put at risk. We're being quarantined. We're close to people. We're in unfamiliar territory, so we'll become more reactive. And the little irritable things that your meaningful relationships have that irritate you are going to become more irritating, and people become more reactive. And reactive is a way of behaving that literally hides your emotions and suppresses them. So I would say two things. We need to become more self-aware of how we are relating to this. And secondly, understand the challenges we all have with our most important and meaningful relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that comes to mind for me when you discuss this is the big change that we're all experiencing. And I know you always talk about with every change comes loss. So, what might some of like those losses of whether it's that face-to-face time or just the changes in our routines? What can people do to kind of help cope with that loss right now?
Well, first of all, they have to recognize what they're losing: freedom, confidence, um, the threat to their family, themselves. Um, I'm the older generation. I'm one of the people that the guy, I think he's lieutenant governor in Texas, said should sacrifice my life to preserve the lives of my grandchildren. So I'm that generation. But your generation, you've got parents, you've got grandparents, and people that are close to you that are vulnerable to this disease. And quite frankly, I still, Josh, don't think I have fully accepted the severity of this. I mean, I just read this morning where my hometown, Avon Lake, Ohio, there's 9 documented cases here. And there's 19 in Lorain County, which is just west of Cuyahoga County. And I think we've had one death. And I can't understand that.
Hmm.
It's amazing. So I really think it's important for people to become more self-aware and understand what's happening. And these losses are severe and they need to be grieved. And that's where people get into trouble. They shortcut the grieving process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And kind of talk about maybe just quickly cover some tips for people to know what it would feel like to shortcut that grieving process, or some things that people may do as they're shortcutting that grieving process.
Typically, when people are under pressure, um, grief, for instance, is the first step. So people immediately go to their head. They get logical. This can't be happening. This isn't real. Um, I think about when a police officer shows up the front door to tell somebody that their loved one's been killed in an auto accident. Typically, the first response is, "No, you got the wrong house. This can't be real,"
Hmm.
etc. So people tend to get logical, suppress their emotions, which we're all really good at, because if we're showing emotions, we're vulnerable. So we
Hmm.
suppress them. Then the next stage is we get angry. And if we're quarantined, who do we get angry with? People that are closest to us.
Sure.
So those are the first two stages, and I can go through the rest of the grieving process. But the important thing is for people to understand what they're losing here. And
Hmm.
it's not just money. And it's not just the threat of losing your job, although that's also significant.
Hmm.
But it's a lot of the other personal things: freedom, confidence, a sense of safety. You're dealing with isolation. You're dealing with an environment that's depressing. It was interesting. I was at Walmart this morning, very early for us seniors, and no one was making eye contact. There were very few people there. A third of the people had masks on, and everybody was keeping their distance. It was really a sight. I've never seen anything like this.
Hmm. And so, in this time of change, how how can people that are experiencing this crisis, that are feeling all that anxiety and all that fear, and maybe even more intense bouts of depression, what are some of the things that people can do to help, maybe whether that's alleviate or deal with some of these unpleasant feelings and experiences?
Wow. First of all, advice doesn't help. And I want to share, I'll take a step aside for a minute and share that be careful of you giving advice to your loved ones who are struggling with all this. Advice being, you know, everything will be okay. You just need to settle down, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work.
Hmm.
One of the things that the Serve Living program is based on is the fact that people cannot change behavior based on learning what other people think, what other people know, or what other people tell them. So becoming optimistic, becoming less cynical can't be taught, but it can be learned.
Hmm.
That's kind of like a a counterintuitive statement or an oxymoron or whatever the right word is. But
Yeah.
you can learn how to change, but it can't be taught. And the way you do that is you have to get into your belief system and your thought process and be able to self examine and be truthful with yourself. Um, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but there's a quote by a famous or not so famous psychiatrist many years ago who said, "The range of what you think and do is limited by what you fail to notice. And because you fail to notice that you fail to notice, there's little you can do to change until you notice that failing to notice limits all that you think and do." Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I heard that and I'm thinking, well, what's he talking about? Fail to notice, fail to notice. And historically, I've always been what's called a hot behavior, a reactor,
Right.
which has kept people at their distance and somewhat intimidating. I can't imagine that, but that's what I've been told. So I got into that a little bit and I thought, wait a minute. Why am I doing this sort of thing? And what I learned is a concept called I call it the eagle's eye. Most people don't know this, but the eagle has two centers of focus on each eye. And because the eyes are on the sides of their heads, they see four images at once.
Mm.
So it's like being at a sports bar.
Yeah. Right.
We have an eagle's eye. We have our eye that sees our reality, and we have our mind's eye that interprets it. So the world then, and this is one of my quotes that people I want to hang on to it, is as you are, not as it is. And what that means is we all see same things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here's the problem or the challenge. The mind's eye controls how you relate to life. Left unmanaged, the mind's eye is going to hold you captive to your past. So part of my advice is for people to understand that how they're viewing their current reality, it's valid, but it's being interpreted from them by their past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So part of the challenge is how do you manage it?
Yeah. Do you think a crisis like this magnifies that, like the mind's eye, our past experiences, whatever kind of trauma we've been through? Do you think a crisis like this magnifies all of those behaviors that we may have been suppressing?
Oh, absolutely. Take a look at what's going on at the highest level of government. Crooks don't become crooks overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Burr liquidated somewhere between 60 and 90% of his net worth in the stock market after attending a meeting in January discussing the severity of this epidemic and what it was going to do to the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
That's criminal.
Yeah.
Okay. What's that say about him? What's that say about people at the highest levels of government? Then if you look at the way the Democrats and the Republicans are arguing over this stimulus package, it's all based on their mind's eye. They cannot have healthy conflict because their mind's eye is holding them all captive.
It's interesting.
And to me, I would think people at the highest level of government could have civil conversations and reach some kind of a collaborative decision versus a right or wrong decision.
Hmm.
Sorry for getting into that. See, this is even affecting me. I'm starting to become a preacher.
Oh, that's all right. It happens, especially when you're just locked up in your house.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got my dog here.
Yeah, perfect.
You know what? And as much as I try to get upset with her, I can't.
It's definitely difficult to take your anger out on a dog when they're just looking at you and they just want to be petted. That's it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But I have plenty of targets.
Yeah.
I have a very, very strong conservative sister and a very, very strong liberal sister.
Mm. So you have to be that great equalizer there, right in the
Well,
middle.
I laugh.
Yeah.
It's like the WWF, you know.
Oh, that's hysterical. Well, just kind of one last thing here for you to kind of wrap up and collect your thoughts. What would be some recommendations that you have for people that may be watching this that they could do to help them through this time, and then also pushing into the future that hopefully when the pandemic goes away?
Um, this will be harsh. People have to become more responsible, more self-responsible. People that tend to blame and to deflect and to point are not taking responsibility. So people need to become more responsible for how they're relating to their current reality.
Hmm.
Secondly, and again, this is an overused quote, but Einstein said doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting different results, is a form of insanity.
Hmm.
So I recommend to people that they begin relating to their days differently.
Hmm.
For instance, most people, because of the hectic schedule we keep, all the technology and everything, our days are out of control. Well, one of the things I've learned over time is how I start my day typically helps me relate to the rest of the day in a healthy way.
Hmm.
And so, what I'm recommending to people is instead of getting up in the morning and immediately starting to think about tasks and what your goals are for the day and all the things you have to do, et cetera, is relax with your favorite beverage. And I hope it's not an alcoholic drink. Caffeine's for me
Yeah.
in the morning. And then think about, first of all, what you're grateful for. I call it a gratitude moment.
Hmm.
And when your thoughts go to those kinds of moments, it changes your chemistry in your body. So you go from gratitude to intentions. Intentions are feelings from your heart. Tasks are thoughts from your brain. So, for instance, an intention would be in today, if I'm home, I have my kids there, my spouse is there, et cetera. My intention today would be to contribute to their day being better for them, as opposed to, I have to get the kids breakfast. I've got to get them dressed. I got to make sure they're doing their homework. I've got to go to the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera. You
Hmm.
see the difference?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so intentions. So we go from gratitude to intentions. And then this third thing is really important. List the names of the people that you will be in contact that day. Now, if you're quarantined, it's probably going to be the same people every day.
Yeah, hopefully.
And make a note. And I'm telling you to write this stuff, Josh. Don't just sit and think it.
Yep.
Make a note of how you can contribute to them feeling valued and heard.
Hmm.
If you do that, it only takes me when I go through that, and I have so many people that say to me, I can't believe you do that every morning. If I didn't do that, I'm not sure where I'd be today.
Yeah.
But if you do that, it only takes 15 minutes. And focus on others. Reduce the focus of self-concern to focusing outwardly. I think that you're going to be able to get through this okay.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. Something that I've started doing because of you. It's definitely helpful. So
Well, I
I can
hope
tell
it
the
helps.
difference of the days. Yeah, definitely. So, all right, Jim. Well, thank you
Well,
for this
thanks for
interview.
giving me a chance to vent here a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, anytime. So, just quickly, I will post some links so you guys can kind of read a little bit more about Jim if you're interested. Hope this is something you've enjoyed. It's always good talking to you, Jim. And we'll talk to you later. So, appreciate your
Yeah, and
time.
if any of the listeners are interested in looking at this life adjustment and reset program, it was selling on the internet for $690 a person. I'm reducing that price to $50. And the reason I'm still charging for it, it's not because of the money for me. It's because people have to invest in themselves if they're going to be what I call a proactive learner. And proactive learners go into a learning situation looking for something. Passive learners are looking to be fed. Reluctant learners are there because they were told to be there. Passive and reluctant learners, this program's not going to help.
Mm,
Does that help?
perfect. Yeah, absolutely. That
All
helped.
right. All
So,
right, my man.
awesome. All right. I
All
will
right.
talk to you soon.
All the
Thank you.
best.
All
Yeah.
right, Jim. Talk to you later. Bye.
Uh-huh.